Hey guys, how are you? I just quickly want to tell you about how awesome mascot design is. I'm doing it as part of my work for an existing app, so it's very exciting. And I most likely will be able to show you after I'm done and it's live. But for now, it's secret. Um, it's just so cool because I was telling my coworker that finally, in the creation process of making this mascot with a concept that fits the app and um, what you want the mascot to communicate, the visual style. Um, and for the first time since I started creating it, the rules of the mascot's anatomy is coming into play. What I mean is when you first start creating a mascot, you draw ideas from different styles and visual elements and objects. And for me, it's a dog. um, and so, dogs, you can draw in any way. Um, but the thing is, the mascot has to be consistent. And so, as I draw the mascot more and more, its rules of anatomy starts settling. So, what I mean is, you have your paws of the dog, right? So at first you just draw paws and then you do a second pose and a third pose. And here at the fourth pose, you start to try to draw consistency between how the paws look. And that is what I mean. So now when I draw the paw, I know exactly how this part curves, how this part would curve, and how this part curves here at the elbow. And I start knowing intrinsically about how his ear would curve and how his back would curve. So my mascot is a mix between freehand and illustrator. So I have a lot of straight and curved lines. It's a bit more geometrical, um, but still it has the essence of freehand. So that creates such a beautiful blend between stylistic poses and a nice consistency in stylistic treatment. Oh, that's so cool. um, the creation process is always difficult. There's a difficult part that I always struggle with, and that is where not the ideation phase. That is easy. I can ideate for hours, looking at different styles and ideas and concepts and colors and textures and mark making. I absolutely love the ideation phase. But when it comes to putting it down, it is the start of the sketching phase. And I always get doubtful in that phase. I doubt how it would turn out. But as they always say, trust the process. And it's so true. And time again, I find myself doubting and being unsure if this thing will work out or not. But when you just keep at it, it falls into place. Suddenly, like with this mascot, the rules of anatomy for that mascot just clicks in your brain and with your hand. Um, and so for me, when I get over that difficult curve, then the process is so easy because then you have this intrinsic knowledge about the rules of the mascot and the anatomy, and then you can make 1,000 different poses because you know. Um, yeah, so that's very exciting. um, yeah, what else? Um, Mascots are quite difficult because it's a representative of a whole, usually a company's or product's idea. And so you want a very noticeable mascot, it can't be generic because people won't remember it. And the mascot has to communicate in my case, the company's values and the aim. So having all that in one object that needs to do different things um, is quite a challenge. You can make any very generic mascot. Um, and so in our process, I'm always trying to go back to the concept. So when I see this cute dog pose and that thing, a characteristic of that dog, and how it connects with the company, I always have to think about that. And so going back to the concept with each sketch and each environment I want to put the mascot in is so important because I think you can easily lose sight of the goal of the mascot. So it's a bit less surface level mascot. So I try not to now overthink the concept. The company does not want me to have these super deep concepts, and I've learned critical thinking in my studies at Open Window, the 5 years that I studied illustration and design. And so, I can just have a bit more fun. It's a bit more flexible, and because they don't want this very deep concept, but still, it's my job as the creator, the illustrator, and the designer to keep at the concept and try to portray that through the mascot's actions and poses and things the mascot interact with. So yeah, that's so exciting. I think a general good rule of thumb for mascot design is the mascot has to be unique. So I'm not talking about it has to be this weird alien that no one knows, but it has to have distinguishable elements that link it to the company or the product or the whatever it wants to represent. Us artists, a lot of us have mascots, and I also have a mascot that I'm gonna introduce sometime and make. Um, as our very own Studio Uake mascot. And I lost my train of thought. Oh, okay. And so it has to be recognizable and noticeable and unique. And so the other thing, it has to be consistent. Your mascot, like, it has to have some element of consistency that you can see this mascot and that mascot and say they are the same mascot. So for me, it's keeping the colors, the shape, and the line essence and rules of anatomy of the dog the same. And so if I, for example, make his paws, without individual toes, just like a general shape paw, and I use that for some poses, and in other poses, I suddenly in the same anatomy pose, I have little toes. It doesn't make sense unless the dog or the mascot is intentionally interacting with something that needs toes. So I wouldn't say if you don't draw a toe for one mascot, you can't ever have toes. But it helps keep consistency. So for example, if the dog were to make a paw print, then I would draw a more noticeable paw. But other than that, I try to keep it, So that's one way of keeping consistency. Obviously, color. If If your mascot doesn't change colors, then that's a very big factor in keeping consistency. If your mascot does change colors, for example, it's an emotional bird and it changes colors, then you have to keep consistency with its rules of anatomy and, for example, how it looks, so that the shape looks recognizable even though the color is different. Or there's specific mark making. For example, if you have a family of mascots for your company, for example, then unless you specifically want each mascot to be totally different in style, in line width, in mark making, in color, that's a very specific choice. But if you want the company, this mascot and that mascot, and they differ, but you still want them to be linked together, then style is such a big component. So for example, you can have an elephant and a bird, or like in K-pop Demon Hunters, you can have like the tiger and is it a magpie or a crow? I'm not sure. But so they're very distinct creatures, right? But the style is the same. And so you can use, as an illustrator and designer, a lot of unique marking techniques and line width, and the same color palette. Or, for example, if your creatures are yellow, and you want, no, that's wrong. If your creatures are different colors, right? But you want it kind of to look the same, a good technique is color palette. So you can use pastels, or you can use vibrant, bright colors, or you can use this color combination and that color combination. Like, I forget the name, but it's like when you see the color wheel, especially on Adobe, you have like these, like a triangle or like um, a hexagon. It's like complementary colors and tertiary. I forgot. Wait, let me just search it. Then you can use that color theory to apply, because then each mascot has different colors, but there's something distinct about the way you put colors together that actually has a thread of connection through your mascots. And let me just search here. Hmm. Oh, here it is. They call it the 7 types of color theory. I see it on www.figma.com. And so the first is uh, analogous, then monochromatic, then complementary, then split complementary, then triadic, then tetradic, and then square color theme. So this really can drive home, I think, something intrinsic about your mascots, and how people perceive your mascots. For example, if you make a very bright yellow, like primary yellow mascot, and you make a pastel one, it kind of feels disjointed, or not together. Obviously, anything's possible, so you really can get away with it. But for example, if you use, yeah, I think you get the idea. So yeah, let me get back to work. I just wanted to explain my extreme excitement for illustration, the world of illustration and creativity. And I just want to encourage illustrators and designers who find themselves in corporate jobs like I do. Um, I want to encourage you to keep at your creativity. Um, but I think that it can be a video in itself. Yeah, bye guys. Have a good day.
Guys, it's so important, now that I think about it, to make sure that your mascot shows well on a bright and a dark and like a third color background, because your mascot's not gonna look perfect with all the background colors there are. But look at the colors your company usually uses, and it has to work on white, it has to work on black, and then another color. Because otherwise you're gonna have to either have different mascots that can this mascot is for white background, that mascot is for black background, which obviously makes your admin a lot more. Or you can make one mascot that fits on all these different backgrounds. That's more difficult, and so what usually will happen is you can use line work or highlights or shadows to make sure it actually translates well on these different background colors, and that's very important. So yeah, usually um, a plain and simple outline can work, but for example, if you don't have outlines on your mascot, if you just have solid colors, no outlines, then that will become a bit difficult. So when you design the mascot, I think first prize is you have one mascot that can be applied on different backgrounds, and not this background is white, you have to use that mascot because it has like a black outline. And this background is black, so you have to use that mascot because it has a white outline. Yeah, try to save yourself the trouble, and happy creating. And yeah, I'm sorry for my sound in the first part. My earbud was still connected with the mic, and it was on my table, not in my ear. So the sound was a mess. But yeah, happy creating.